Welcome to the fine print, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Caleb Teskey, and I am back for more with Can Amelia. I thought I would shamelessly plug your Instagram.
Sick.
All right, cool. I wanted to ask you about the advisory committee. This is something we talked about before. Now, originally, the advisory committee through the legislation was supposed to have 12 seats, and it ended up getting expanded to 14. Can you talk about how that happened a little bit?
Sure. So yes, the advisory committee to the Cannabis Control Board was initially supposed to have 12 seats. None of those seats represented the medical community or the medical program well. And so part of what Jeffrey and Jess and I were trying to do was get kind of a medical voice in. So we advocated that when we went in to talk to House GovOps, we advocated that an additional seat be added for a healthcare professional. And we were also advocating that the Symptom Relief Oversight Committee not be disbanded, that it continue on after the CCB, because it was set to dissolve once the CCB took over. And so those two things added up to a member of the Symptom Relief Oversight Committee was given a chair on the advisory committee, which was okay. It was the chair of the Symptom Relief Oversight Committee or his designee, but it ended up going to Jim Romanoff. Cool.
Is he a medical patient?
He is, but he shops at the Champlain Valley Dispensary, and he was appointed by the Champlain Valley Dispensary back before it was all series med slang, so have you. In response to that, Jeffrey and VGA went in and they said, listen, we need a patient or a caregiver on this advisory committee, or a cannabis healthcare professional, basically somebody who wasn't appointed by the dispensaries and has nothing to do with them. And it looked like we were doing pretty well there, until the Vermont Cannabis Trade Association, somehow, I was not in the meeting, heard it all secondhand, as it tends to happen in Vermont. Somehow the Vermont Cannabis Trade Association snagged that 14th spot that was introduced, intending it to go to a patient, caregiver, or cannabis healthcare professional. And that is how Meg Delia got the spot on the advisory committee. And so...
Is she a medical patient?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay.
She could be. I'm not sure though. So basically how that ended up happening, or what it ended up being, was now, instead of having just like an independent patient or an independent cannabis healthcare professional or an independent caregiver, somebody who doesn't access the dispensaries, which was the main goal, we have two people appointed, both from the same dispensary. Yeah. And that's not to say like anything personal about either of those people. It's just, it's hard as somebody who isn't a registered patient to have a voice in the medical community if the dispensaries get all of the priority when it comes to creating legislation, to having a voice, to advocacy. Like, I feel often that Jessie Lynn, who is a registered patient, and Jeffrey, who is a registered caregiver, are taken more seriously sometimes than me, who has been a registered patient and has been doing this since 2015, but isn't currently, in the registry. It does get kind of frustrating in that sense.
And I wanted to say that because I've listened to a number of your public comments. I've been listening through all the old board meetings. And when I hear you commenting, you sound frustrated.
Totally.
I can hear it in your voice. And what's it like how do you keep composed when there are so many frustrating issues facing this market?
Well, sometimes I don't, and that's few and far between. Mostly I just focus on the policy, like there are very, very concrete changes that we could make to make people's lives easier right now. But because
Tell me about them. Can we get into that?
Yeah, totally. Things like letting patients shop tax-free from adult use dispensaries. If patients didn't have to pay that 14% tax, what a huge burden that would be to have lifted off of them. Are we really requiring every single medical patient in this state to go to 5 dispensaries, or are we requiring somebody to start another medical dispensary? Nobody wants to open a medical dispensary in this state. It's not going to be profitable.
I haven't met any of them. Yeah.
Yeah, no, nobody's going to do it. And so patients need to be able to shop tax-free from adult use stores. It should not be the burden of an adult use retail establishment owner to provide a patient discount. The patient discount should be written into law. Things like price caps for the medicine that patients receive. Patients should not be getting charged $350 for an ounce. And I'm getting told by current dispensary employees, well, the other dispensaries do it, so why can't we? You know, it's fucked up. They set their own market value essentially in that way. You know, the caregiver program, we talked about those reforms earlier. I want to see all of that. I want to see patient plant counts increased. I want to see patient allowances increased. 2 ounces is not enough. Patients need to be able to hold at least 6 at any given time, or the equivalent of 6 ounces of material. Part of the problem is that we have equated patient allowances and allowances in general to flour, which doesn't make any sense, because you can't have an equivalent in flour in things like concentrates, because every single strain is going to put off a different amount of oil depending on heat, depending on, you know, pressure when it's pressed, depending on the wash. Like, there is no comparison between like 2 ounces of flour and the equivalent of 2 ounces of flour in oil. It's not a standard.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so we need to come up with a way to standardize all of that, and price cap all of it for patients. We also need, and Jessie Lynn is currently working on this because she is a fucking badass. Jessie Lynn is working on a standardized education program. She's partnering with Clean Green, which is Clean Green certification is one of the highest value certifications that cannabis can receive currently. There is no organic accreditation for cannabis. You know, you can say that you use organic inputs and you can grow organically, and that's cool. Like, I believe you, but you can't call yourself like USDA certified organic. It's just not a thing while we're federally illegal. So Clean Green, I think, is hoping to bridge that gap. And they also have things like you have to have sustainability plans long term. You have to become more sustainable as you go on to maintain your Clean Green status. So yeah, she's working with them right now to create a standardized education program across the board for medical and adult use. So I think that's really awesome. Gosh, we've been advocating for so much change.
Can I ask you about? Can I ask you about the? I see that the originally the medical dispensaries were supposed to get a 6-month head start, and I saw a story in the paper the other day about that's not happening anymore.
Yeah, so quick shout out to Vermont Growers Association. The reason for that, and I mean, so it could be for multiple reasons, but the reasoning I see, for instance, why they're not opening in Chittenden County, Vermont Growers Association went town to town to town before town meeting day last year. And they said, if you are putting cannabis retail on the ballot, this is the language we want you to use, because this language negates that 6-month head start. So it means that they cannot start before everybody else in the towns that adopt this language. So for instance, Essex has adopted VGA's language. I believe Winooski has adopted VGA's language, like many, many towns throughout the state have, including towns where these large corporations operate. Now, we all know also that Slang recently acquired Series Med for $25 million. 17 million of that was funded by the cannabis company Trulieve. Yeah. Slang is the single largest producer of what is called the O pen. It's their cart vape pen, you know, their battery powered vape pen. They also just entered into a huge collaboration with the brand Cookies. So the folks that just bought out our largest medical dispensaries in the state are also the like massive producers of what's about to be like Cookies vape pens. And I guarantee that's what we're going to see in our dispensaries. So just going off of that, going off of the huge changes that they've been like doing in their management, they let go like a bunch of people recently. I saw that, yeah. They let, including Shane Lynn. Yeah, they've had a huge turnover. I'm not positive at this very point in time, but I'm pretty sure Shane's on the Slang board.
I I
double
thought they
check
let him
that.
go. I thought Meg stayed and he got let go. I would have to double check
All right.
that.
So that's double check that before you throw this one up.
I will.
But so yeah, and either way, Shane's made enough money like off the Vermont medical program that he'll be fine. But I just have a feeling that all of this was so much change. Like, I don't think that they were ready to open, regardless of VGA's like language or not.
It seems like that. It seemed, because I know through that deal they were supposed to build a big facility up in Milton or something.
Yeah.
And expand their operations up there, and that hasn't happened yet.
I believe that so they were supposed to put a 50,000 square foot building in
Right.
Milton.
Yeah.
Fucking crazy.
It's like a $7 million facility, I believe.
Yeah, I haven't really heard what's going on with that. The last time I even like looked into that, they were still looking for their they were filing for a permit, like an eco sustainability requirement or something like that.
Some of that Act 250 stuff, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, with all these quality control problems, how can medical patients trust the product that they're buying from these dispensaries?
That's an excellent question. You know, up until this new legislation that got pushed through when we legalized adult use retail, the dispensaries have been doing their own product testing.
Right. Which I've also heard.
And their reporting requirements were like null. They were not required to report a whole lot. Huh. And so we can't really know at any point in time how bad it ever truly was. We'll never know, you know. And so for some patients, like and for me, like admittedly, like that trust won't ever be restored. Like I will never, ever, ever shop at Serious Med. Like you will never catch me in that dispensary ever. But for other people, you know, they'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Like the thing is, like Vermonters are working there. Like they are employing Vermonters. They are employing Vermonters to grow. They're going to be buying craft cultivators cannabis because they are required to.
Right, 25% or something.
Something like that. And so yeah, like they can contribute back to the community all they want. They can make all of the improvements they need to make. They can lower their prices. They can provide a better, cleaner product. They can have as much accountability as we are requiring of them. And like, cool, you were still bought for $25 million by a multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporation.
Yeah, and you know, truly, that lady's the CEO there. Her husband is in jail for fraud and corruption and bribery for pushing some bills that apparently helped them acquire some extra licenses.
I saw that. And the thing is, like, especially for things like Slang, and then, you know, we have other dispensaries that are owned by massive corporations. We've got Ianthus and Curaleaf in here too. Sure, and Curaleaf actively lobbies against home grow rights within states, you know? So I think that the people that work in these places have the best intentions. And like, I don't doubt, like, they want to help patients. They want to make these companies better. They want, you know, like they want to see these places that they're working succeed, but like follow the money, you know. Like it's great that you guys want to help, but do your bosses do your CEOs, like do your CEOs even give a fuck about patients, you know?
But have they ever touched a weed plant?
Yeah, if I go over to fucking Forbin's, like I know exactly who grew my shit. I knew how he grew it. I knew where he got the genetics, you know. Like I'd much rather support a small local family-owned business than ever take another step into one of these corporate-owned medical dispensaries. So I don't need to shop at Walmart for my weed.
So you like the Forbins. Is there any other operators in Vermont that we should keep an eye on that you're into?
Fucking hold up. All right.
Yeah.
Let me open my Instagram.
Get into it.
I mean, off the top of my head, there is a collaboration that is currently pending that they're working on between Quantum Genetics and Burnt Mountain Agriculture called Stone Leaf Cannabis. And I have really high hopes for that. Other than that, you know, I've tried a lot of people's stuff. You know, there's Bushy Beard, who I know you just had an interview with.
Great guy.
Yeah, dude grows great shit. There's, let's see. You know, you put me on the spot and I forget.
I did, absolutely. That's what I'm doing here.
It's all good. Oh, what are they called now? Moksha. Have you tried the Moksha cannabis, like their edibles? They make these little things called mapes.
Oh, the Angela over at Foreman told me about that.
They're good. They're
I've been
really
dying
good.
to get a hold of some, but I have not tried them yet.
All right. And then my buddy over at Mountain Fire Farm, he makes a lot of like maple infused stuff, grows a lot of really quality sun grown. He's hunting landrace strains right now, which I think is really cool.
Can you tell me about that? Because that's something Olin mentioned the other day. Land race strain. I don't know what that means. Can you tell me what land race means?
I am like such a, I don't want to call myself a noob because I've been around this shit for like a decade now, but like my husband's the green thumb out of the two of us. As far as I could tell you, landrace strains, I think the original intent was like strains that are native to the land that they're on. So like Afghani would be a landrace strain if it came from Afghanistan,
Okay.
things like that. But I don't know that they're like true. I don't know. Other people would know
Okay.
better
I
than
just
me.
never heard that phrase before, and I was
Yeah,
curious.
totally.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned one of your public comments that really stuck in my mind at the board meetings was when you said the CCB's job is not to parent children. Please tell me what you meant by that.
Yeah. So my other day job is I'm a graphic designer, and I do a lot of branding for cannabis businesses. And there have been a couple issues that I've come across in the regulations in regard to things like packaging, labeling, graphics, etc. And yeah, I think that the CCB has been given an unnecessary amount of responsibility for parenting other people's children. If you don't want your kid to get into cannabis, lock it away. If you don't want your kid to know that you consume cannabis, like put it away. Do I agree with things like don't put cartoon characters or don't make your edibles look like, like Wrigley's candy or Skittles or like anything, like totally, like don't do that shit. Like not only is that making it more like dangerous for kids, but it's also just unoriginal and stupid. um but I do think that when it comes to things like I hate the term childproof packaging. I hate it with every fiber of my being because like I can't open a lot of childproof packaging.
I know. I'm with you. I got the arthritis. Some of these
Yeah.
packages are fucking hard to open.
Yeah, and like a majority of medical patients tend to be people who either have joint mobility issues or they're seniors or they're people with low grip strength. Like the fact that it's called childproof packaging drives me insane. And multi-use childproof packaging is the worst part of all of it. If you need to buy something in a sealed container, cool, but I should be able to break that seal and then have an easier time opening it every single time after that. I understand like certain things like concentrates need to be like resealable because you don't want to lose like your freshness and your terps and like all that bullshit. But like, man, edibles, are they really going to make edibles that hard to get into when a parent could literally just put them on a shelf or put them in a safe? Like, yeah. So there have been a lot of things surrounding that. There's also the issue with the THC caps and like concentrate percentages.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
what's dumb about all of this, and I mean there are many dumb things about the THC caps, but the thing that irks me the most is that the only concentrates that got capped were solid concentrates. So we're still going to have 90% THC carts
Right.
floating around, but they're capping, solventless hash.
And how do you put a cap on those things? Because to my knowledge, hash is going to be way over 60%. How do
Totally.
you, what do you do to bring it down? You have to water
Well,
it. Basically, you got to cut it, right?
you gotta like, I mean, either they're gonna have to cut it with CBD or I don't even know, because they've also put a bunch of regulations on additives. So like, after the whole vape cart scare, they're obviously gonna crack down on what you can and can't add into things. Like you can't just put vitamin E oil in your fucking dabs. But like, yeah, they're gonna have to cut them down basically with CBD or with another cannabinoid to lower that initial THC percentage. And that's also to say that the only thing that is capped is THC. So you could have THCV, THCA, and neither of those things are capped. You can have you know, CBD, CBN, CBG, none of that's going to be capped. The only thing that's capped is one specific molecule that is only a fraction of the effect that you feel when you consume cannabis.
That's another great point. Huh. And let me ask you about, it seems like right now, a lot of people are feeling some kind of way about this delay in processing the license applications, especially outdoor growers who are itching to get their plants in the ground. What are your thoughts on that?
I feel it for the outdoor growers, man. That it sucks, but I also think that the CCB was given an unrealistic timeline. Like, man, this was a lot to ask of them in a relatively short amount of time. And when they were given Act 164 to build off of, and they had to fix it, they spent a lot of their time listening to public input on how they could fix everything because they wanted to make it as equitable and fair for everybody as possible. Like, how do you feel about it? How can you feel about it? You know, like, they're a team of, you know, 5 people, 6 people if you include, you know, Nellie and Dave, their lawyer, as you should. You know, for the longest time it was just the 6 of them. And now thankfully they've got the help that they need to get through all of this. But like, man, 500 like pre-qualification applications and then 100 fully submitted, like, you know, it was just, I don't know, it's a lot, and the timing sucks, and the timeline in and of itself was unrealistic. I think that a lot of people were concerned about being able to bring their own genetics to market.
For sure.
For this first year, especially for outdoor growers, fuck it, just do it. Just fucking do it. Just do it. We'll figure it out next year. Okay, just fucking do it.
Do you think maybe the board should have sped up the process for the outdoor licenses? I mean, I know they wanted to put the social equity applicants first, but these outdoor growers, some of whom have a lot of money invested in their grow operations, or some of maybe have investors that are now waiting for money back because they were told on May 1st they were going to be ready to go, and now we're almost to June here, and they're still waiting on their applications.
So to be fair, nobody was told you will have plants in the ground and your business will be open May 1st. Nobody was told that. You know, licenses and licensing applications opened, and that was all anybody was promised. Now, I wish that the whole fucking process had gone faster so that outdoor growers right now aren't feeling the burn of that. But at this point, there's nothing we can do. It's fucking, what day is it? It's May 27th, you know? And it's either going to happen for these people or it isn't going to happen. Now, do I think that there should be some kind of reciprocation or reparations or something like that when people then get their licenses? Like, we can talk about that. You know, does the CCB or the agency now owe these outdoor licensees something because their year got fucked up? Like, we can talk about that too. But as of right now, I don't think, and I've had a lot of conversations with the CCB at this point, you know, and every single member of them, I've been in meetings with them. I've been working with them since they got appointed. They've been trying their fucking best. And especially this legislative session, they were going up against the brick wall that is Gannon, you know, and that's hard. And they're the new kids on the block. They're a brand new state agency. They're still figuring out like positioning. Like I said, I don't think they've even like renamed and restaffed what used to be the Symptom Relief Oversight Committee, you know. I think that the timeline initially was just like poorly thought out, and that wasn't even their fault, you know. It's what they were handed.
I think a lot of this was poorly thought out, or at first I thought it would be carefully controlled to corner the market before it opened, but I think there's maybe a little column A, a little column B. Let me ask you about the packaging, because that's been another big issue, especially for medical patients who, you know, this 50 milligram per package thing was the first thing that I really read where I was like, fucking what? Yeah. And, you know, especially for medical patients, or even some people I know that are not medical patients who eat 200, 250 milligrams of edibles at a time. What are your thoughts on the packaging?
Well, it's important to note, first of all, that the medical dispensaries do not have to abide by these packaging rules, or by any of the THC caps, any of the potency milligram dosage caps, none of that. So when we talk patients, you and I both know that we're not just talking about people who are registered on the Vermont Medical Registry. We're talking about people like you and I also.
Yeah.
And so it's going to affect different people in different ways. Some people are just not going to engage in the legal market when it comes to their edibles. They're just going to go to their friend that they know who makes edible. You've talked about how you can get you've got a friend that'll just hand you a paper bag.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's one set of people. Then we have people who maybe are just like determined to get that product. So they buy 5 or 6 packages at a time, and the waste that contributes, like the CCB has packaging sustainability requirements that they've released, which are helpful, you know, but for the first year or two, people have already bought their packaging, you know, and so you've got people that are going to buy 5 or 6 packages of 50 milligram pack edibles, just to feel like they can get their dose. In that same vein of thought, though, as somebody from the medical world, and nobody ever wants to hear me say this, okay? Like nobody ever wants to hear me say this, and I hate the sound of me saying it. But if you are reliant on 300, 400, 500 milligrams, 1,000 milligrams of THC, maybe take a break. And I know that sucks to hear, and I don't say it lightly coming from somebody who relies on cannabis for symptom relief. You know, to say like, don't consume cannabis is really, really hard to hear when you're like, well, that's the only thing that gets me through the day. Like, I feel you there, but if you are at the point where you got to eat 1,000 milligram Nerds rope just to get through your day, like maybe if you take a day or two or a week, you can then go back down to like only needing 500 milligrams a day. And it's just that little break that your body needs to kind of cycle through that THC. You can overload your endocannabinoid system, especially through edibles, because that is the like most potent way to interact with your endocannabinoid system.
That's another great point. Sorry.
No, I'm just like, I've been doing this in like a medical aspect for the entirety of my like time as somebody who consumes cannabis. So I've learned a lot, and like something in the last couple of years I've been trying to be really mindful of is consciously consuming. Like, don't get me wrong, there was a point in time when I was like 23, 24 years old, my older sister smoking like 7 blunts a day, taking gnarly bong rips every hour.
That's like college.
Yeah, totally. I think all of us have been in that point where we're just like, either we finally got a job where we can afford the amount of cannabis we want, you know, or we've got a buddy that hooks it up for free, so it feels like it's just like never ending, you know. You get to that point where maybe you don't realize how much cannabis you're consuming on a daily basis, or you don't realize how much you're actually relying on. I don't subscribe to the cannabis is addictive line of thought. That's not what I'm saying. I do think that you can develop a dependency on something when you are using it for symptom relief. And, you know,
when it works, you know, like, wow,
works.
hey, I should keep doing that.
Exactly. And I mean, I do think that we live in this kind of like substance reliant over consuming culture, where it's like, how drunk can you get? How high can you get? How much can you take? How much can you smoke? Can you hang? Can you fucking smoke as much as me? Can you smoke as much as Snoop Dogg? Can you smoke as much as Willie Nelson? Can you keep up?
Let me ask you a sort of a kind of a tangential question.
Yeah.
Do you think sort of like the structure of our society and the way that the American sort of lifestyle contributes to people sort of wanting to get away from it all?
Yeah, totally. Escapism is totally a thing, you know, and whether you smoke cannabis or you drink alcohol to unwind, or you're on Xanax for your anxiety, or you're addicted to gambling, or you're addicted to porn, or you know, travel and you never settle down and you never find a home, like everybody's running from something, and everybody's just doing what they can to cope with a society that was not built for us. Like, our generation was not raised to succeed in a society like this, and it's because society was not built for us. It was built for rich people.
Look, we got about 10 minutes here and I'm going to have to get going so I can get ready for work. But I wanted to ask you a little bit about your side projects doing the merch. I see you're doing a lot of merch and graphic design. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's just like that's like my creative outlet. I realized like 6 months ago that I was kind of hitting a wall with the branding stuff, and it wasn't really, I just wasn't like, I didn't feel like I was making progress in like my art ability and my art style. So I work with Vermont, shameless plug. And I've been doing a lot of stuff with Eli with events. And so I thought if I can just like focus on that for a while, not take branding clients, not constantly be worried about like deadlines and delivery times and all that shit, and kind of just focus on these events that are spaced out like a couple months apart. I might as well get like a little side hustle going. So yeah, I started designing merch. I just dropped a new design yesterday, and I think you commented on my cannabis one.
Yeah, I did. I like that.
Sick. Yeah, so I'm doing that now. And that's just like a little side hustle. It's my Redbubble, link in my Instagram bio.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I do that stuff. I've got Green Mountain Patients Alliance, which is so close to my heart, where it's me, Jessie Lynn Dolan of Vermont Cannabis Nurses Association, and Jeffrey Pizzatello from Vermont Growers Association. And the three of us have just kind of been tackling legislation surrounding medical cannabis for the last like 2.5 years. So we decided to kind of slap a logo and a name on it and go for nonprofit and see what we could do to kind of help patients on a more direct physical level rather than just advocating in the state house.
Cool.
Yeah.
I also wanted to, boy, this is kind of out of line here, but I wanted to circle back because this was an advisory committee sort of question. Yeah. I noticed that there are Ingrid Jones, I think is her name. She's a former state trooper. She's on the advisory committee, and also Nader Hashim, who is a former state trooper. As far as the social equity piece is concerned, it seems like they prioritized law enforcement in making these appointments over actual people who are negatively impacted by prohibition. And I was hoping you would speak on your thoughts on that for a minute.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a byproduct of prohibition, isn't it? I think, listen, when it comes to law enforcement and cannabis, I think that sometimes officers make good points and sometimes they are just regurgitating outdated information from Reagan era politics. In terms of legitimate concerns, I think the biggest one that officers have and that we're going to start encountering is consuming while driving. It's another one of those issues where it's like, listen, we all know that there's a certain amount of cannabis you can consume and still drive safely, just like there's a certain amount of alcohol you can drink and still drive safely. But the problem is we have a blood alcohol content that is legally acceptable to drive under, and there is no current equivalent standard in THC. So how can you pull anybody over and persecute anybody for driving under the influence of cannabis when we don't currently have a standard allowable percentage or allowable amount to consume before driving? So that's kind of where, that's my main thing, where me and the cops don't.
Which I'm sure is a concern for you, who's someone who is a regular user.
I mean, totally. My main concern with it, honestly, when I've spoken to cops and been like, so what do you look for? When you pull somebody over and you suspect they're like on cannabis, what do you look for? And what concerns me is their answers usually involve behavior. Fidgety hands, can't look you in the eye, you look nervous. Well,
I am nervous. You have a gun and I don't.
Well, the rate, and my point here, the rate of neurodivergency and the rate at which it is diagnosed in the country is currently going up at like a very largely like accelerating rate. So you don't know, or that cop doesn't know, if they're interacting with somebody who has autism, ADHD, Tourette's syndrome, some sort of mental illness, or has PTSD and is triggered from past experiences with other officers. You just can't possibly know those things, and all of those things are going to affect your behavior when interacting with that officer. So if your sole point of this person is too intoxicated to drive comes from nervous behavior, you're going to disproportionately affect folks with mental illnesses and neurodivergencies. And in that, you're going to disproportionately affect Black and Indigenous people who are statistically more likely to be pulled over by police, who also suffer from neurodivergencies, mental illnesses, PTSD, and past experiences.
Boy, that's another great point you make there. Also, it's just from a personal standpoint, like we used to get high before driver's ed every day. It was fine. I learned how to drive when I was high. Nobody wants to hear that, but it's, and some of these studies that have been quoted, they say, oh, there was an increase in Colorado. They say there's an increase in traffic accidents after they legalized weed. But then if you go right under that, it says, we don't have enough information to prove that this was caused by legalization. So and that was really what held up the whole legislation, was Phil Scott saying he wanted roadside safety testing or whatever,
Yep, that was one of the things that I was against S54, was because that roadside testing was going to be included.
Me too.
A big thing to be concerned about in regard to roadside testing, DUIs, getting pulled over, all of that is the fucking contact high myth. The contact high myth. If you are a passenger and I'm sitting, or if I'm a passenger and I'm smoking a chillum with my window down completely, that driver's not going to get high because of the ventilation between me and the window. But try to tell the cop that,
I've tried to tell cops a lot of things. I've been trying to get a cop to come on the show here, but I haven't found one that's willing to talk. If you know any, let me know. Hey, listen, do you have any final thoughts here before we go, or any events you're doing that you might want to plug or anything like that?
Yeah, totally. I'll be speaking with Jesse Lynn at Vermont Cannabis Convention next month on the 26th. And we'll be talking about the current state of the medical program.
Where's that at? Is that a public event?
Yeah, that's at Vermont Cannabis Convention at the Champlain Valley Expo. And we will be speaking June 26th. That's a Sunday at 2 p.m.
Cool.
And Green Mountain Patients Alliance, Vermont Growers Association, and Vermont Cannabis Nurses will all have booths there as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap. Amelia, thank you so much for your time. And I hope that we can follow up on this sometime down the road.
Sure.
All right. Take care.
See you, dude.